Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Then Al-Hafiz said, Babud Diyat, the chapter of blood money. Diyat, the plural of diya, is the wealth which is paid to the victim if you have injured him without due right, or the wealth paid to the relatives of the person you have killed without due right if they demand it. There is evidence from the Quran about the diya. Allah Jalla wa Ala says in Surah An-Nisa, when you have murdered somebody accidentally or even intentionally, he says وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ, and the diya, the blood money given to the victim's family. As far as the hadith are concerned, and there are many and a few of them are coming up, but we mentioned the narration about the two women fighting and the woman threw a stone at the other one, killing her and her child, and the Prophet adjudged that the diya, or the blood money, is to be paid by the aqila of the perpetrating woman. So again, evidence of the blood money. The blood money can be given if you transgress against a Muslim or even a ma'soom kafir in an Islamic state. The madhab of Imam Ahmad is that the diya is of 5 categories. These are camels, cows, sheep, the silver, which is the dirham, and the gold, which is the dinar. So if the perpetrator pays in any one of these 5 categories, then it is obligatory upon the family of the victim or the victim himself to accept this. However, the other 3 madhahib and the majority of the scholars say that the diya is to be paid in terms of camels. This is the asl, or the original currency of the diya. If you're going to pay the diya in any other method, then it would have to be the equivalent of the value of the camels. So we return the matter to the number of camels. But before we start speaking about the amount of diya which is to be given, we do need to speak a few preliminary words and issues before we deal with the amount. So we say that a diya is applicable in cases of al-Jinaayah. And al-Jinaayah is when you transgress against somebody's body in a way which obligates a qisas or diya. So not every type of transgression obligates a blood money. So if you slap somebody on the head, this does not obligate a blood money. Whereas if you cause some serious injury, it does. And this transgression could be direct or indirect. Direct meaning you directly hit him with an object which causes an injury or a fracture of a bone. Or it could be indirect. For example, if you dig a hole in the pavement, and obviously people are walking to and fro, and so one person falls down and injures himself. So you were the cause of it, even though you did not directly cause his injury, you indirectly caused it. So the one directly causing the injury is the mubashir, and the one who causes the injury but not directly is the mutasabbib. And if we have a combination of mutasabbib and mubashir, then the mubashir pays the blood money as long as the mubashir is not a direct result of the mutasabbib. So one person digs a hole and the other person pushes that person in the hole, but they did not agree to this. So these are 2 independent events, but one is a sabab and one is a mubashara. So we say that the mubashir then pays the blood money and not the mutasabbib. Of course, if they agree to injure this person, then both the mutasabbib and the mubashir pay the blood money. So, for example, person A pushes person B on the road. Person C is driving the car and he runs over person B because he did not have enough time to stop. So who's responsible here? Because clearly person C is the mubashir and person A is the mutasabbib. But here we say person A is responsible, not person C, because in this case person C is not a muta'addi. He is not somebody who's transgressing the limits. Therefore person A is responsible. Similarly, for example, if 2 witnesses testify that person A killed person B, and so person A is killed in retaliation by the executioner of the imam, then the 2 witnesses say that we lied because we wanted person A to die. So now, who should take the blame? Should it be the executioner because he's the mubashir, or should it be the 2 witnesses? Well, we say in a case like this, the executioner did not transgress the limits. He was not a muta'addi. Rather, we find it was the 2 witnesses who were the muta'addi. So they are to be executed in return. Or we could have a case where it is not possible for us to take the mubashir into account. For example, somebody throws an innocent person into the lion's den. The lions are the one who directly killed this person as they ate him. But we cannot take the lions to account, so in this case the mutasabbib is to be taken into account. Or for example, if a man orders a child below the age of puberty to kill another innocent person. Now, the one who directly undertook the action was the child, but we cannot take him to account, we cannot kill the child in retaliation. He is not mukallaf. Therefore, any murder which he commits would be unintentional murder. He does not have an intention. So in a case like this, the qisas would have to be taken against the man who ordered him to do this. And we mentioned before there's a difference between intentional murder and quasi-intentional murder, in that with the quasi-intentional murder, the blood money will be upon the aqila of the murderer, but with the intentional murder, the murderer himself would have to pay the full blood money. So this is a significant difference. But what about if the murderer is poor and he cannot pay? Well, in this case, we simply say that this is a debt upon you and you have to pay it. And in a case like this, is he entitled to the zakah payment because he is a person in debt? The answer is yes, because Allah says about the people entitled to the zakah, وَالْغَارِمِينَ, and those who are in debt. And the blood money is certainly a debt. And the reason for this difference, as we said before, is that with the intentional murder, it's clear enough, he has to pay the blood money. He intentionally and willfully killed the victim. But with the mistake or the quasi-intentional, then he did not intend to kill the victim, therefore he does deserve some help. And even in the Quran, there is an indirect reference to the aqila being the one who pay the aql, which is the blood money. Allah says, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ. And whoever kills a believer out of accident, then he has to free a believing servant, and the blood money must be paid to the victim's family. So it says that the blood money must be paid. Allah does not mention who is paying the blood money. He simply says the blood money is to be paid. So this is indirectly telling us that it is not the perpetrator who pays the blood money, rather it is the aqila who pay the blood money, because Allah does not specify the killer to pay the blood money here. What about if a man usurps a young child and takes him with him into his house so that the young child will serve him? Of course he's doing this unlawfully. And then in this house of his, this young child dies. Maybe through natural causes, or through, let's say, an animal attacking him. Then in a case like this, we say that the one who usurped this child, and he took him without due right, he is the guarantor, and the blood money is upon him. Similarly, if a person usurps a servant from somebody else, and this servant dies in the usurper's house, or anywhere else for that matter, then the usurper is a guarantor, and he would have to pay for the damage of this servant. As for if this man abducts a free person, not a servant, then if this free person dies in the place to which he took him, then the abductor is a guarantor for the blood money. But if the free person dies in a place other than to which he took him, then the abductor is not a guarantor. Because the point is, there's a difference between a free person and a servant. A free person is not considered as wealth. A servant is considered as wealth. Therefore, for a free person, if he was to be injured in a place other than the place to which he was abducted, then there is nothing on the abductor. Whereas with a servant, because he is wealth, then as long as this wealth is destroyed after it was usurped, then the usurper stands as a guarantor. So for example, if a man abducts another free person and he takes him to a place and the free person dies because of, let's say, a lightning strike, then the death of this free person is pertaining to the place to which he was abducted. Therefore, the abductor stands as a guarantor. We of course cannot take the lightning to account. So therefore the blood money will be upon the abductor. However, if it be the case that the abductor ties up this free man to a pole, let's say, and he cannot move, and along comes a snake, a poisonous one, and he bites him and kills this man, then we say in this case, naturally retaliation cannot be taken against the snake. So the retaliation, or a life for a life situation, can be taken against the abductor who tied him to the pole. So the abductor is only responsible if the free person is injured or dies in the place to which he was abducted. As for a servant, then the place does not matter and it does not affect the ruling. As long as the servant is injured or is killed, then the usurper would be the guarantor, because it is like he has usurped wealth, so he must pay back this wealth to the original owner, whereas the free person is not the wealth of anyone. Okay, what about this situation? A teacher or a parent disciplines the kid under his authority. Now, if an injury is sustained because of this, then does the parent or the teacher have to pay blood money? Well, we say no, as long as the parent or the teacher is not a muta'addi, so he has not transgressed the limits. And to determine if he is a muta'addi or not, then we have some conditions. Number one, that the reason that this parent or teacher hit the child is because the child did something which deserves a beating. So it mustn't be just any trivial instance of misbehavior, it needs to be something which actually warrants hitting. For example, the Prophet saying that you're allowed to hit your children at the age of 10 if they do not pray. The second condition is that the child is able to take a hitting, this type of beating. So if the child is so young, below the age of tamyiz, then hitting him will not make a difference. And if the child is insane, then hitting him again will not make a difference. So hitting him in this case would be a ta'addi, or overstepping the limit. And then the third condition is that he's hitting him to instill the fear of Allah Jalla wa'ala in the child, not to take personal revenge, because sometimes parents could do this. The child does not do something which the parent wants, and it's not about disciplining the child in order to fear Allah Jalla wa'ala, rather they seek revenge on this child, and this is not permissible. So any instance of hitting in a case like this would be a ta'addi. Also, the Prophet has told us that you should not hit anyone from your family when disciplining them, this would include the wife and children, more than 10 hits. So going above 10 lashes then would be ta'addi, or overstepping the limit, and a ta'addi is when you do something you're not supposed to do, as opposed to tafreed, which is gross negligence, which is when you do not do something which you are meant to do. So that's pertaining to the quantity of hits. What about the quality of hits? It must not be such that it leaves bleeding or bruises, because a beating of this sort would not lead to the tarbiyah and the good upbringing of the kid. It will simply lead to the child fearing the parent or the teacher, and this will have detrimental effects on his psychology. So the idea is to improve the child's psychology, but hitting him too harshly will damage his psychology. And when he grows up, he will himself become a violent type of person, as we have seen with many people. So that's one extreme, but on the other hand, we don't go to the other extreme in that we never ever hit the child, no matter how much wrong he does. This is the other extreme, because with this extreme now, it also leads to detrimental consequences in that the child becomes spoilt and that he will grow up with a bad behavior. And by that time, it will be irreversible. So in total, we can say that there are 5 conditions when it comes to disciplining the children. Number 1, that the child does something to warrant this hitting. So it cannot be just for any misdemeanor. Number 2, that the child is capable of taking such a beating. So he must not be too young or insane. Number 3, that the person doing the hitting is somebody with authority over the child. So it could be the teacher or it could be the parent. As for just any stranger coming along and hitting the child, then he has no right to do that. Rather, the stranger needs to refer the child to the parent or guardian. Number 4, that the parent or guardian hits the child not seeking personal revenge or seeking to stamp his authority on the child, but rather to instill the fear of Allah Jalla wa'ala on this child. And then 5thly, he must not overstep the limit. And this is pertaining to the number of hits and also the intensity of the hits and also the place of the hit. So you're not allowed to hit the child on the face, for example, and neither are you allowed to hit him in a place which could cause serious injury or even death. So note these 5 conditions which must be met before you can discipline the child. And similar conditions apply to a man hitting his wife. He has been given the right to hit the wife, just like he has been given the right to hit his children, but this must be for the sake of discipline. so it must not be a hitting which causes bruises or bleeding, or a severe hitting. And again, this is in fact the moderate opinion. Anything other than this would be the extreme opinion. So for example, for a person to completely beat up his wife and children would be extreme, and it would lead to negative consequences. But also, for him to completely leave them alone, without any discipline whatsoever, will equally lead to detrimental consequences and a breakdown of marriage, as we are witnessing with the kuffar. And it will also lead to the children developing this extremely bad devil-may-care attitude. Okay, what about this situation? The Sultan calls a woman into the court because she is involved in an incident in which we have to decide who the culprit is. And because of this, she gets scared, and this woman is pregnant with a child. And because of this court case, she gets scared, and because of this, the child dies. Question is the Sultan a guarantor or not? Some scholars have said that he's a guarantor in all cases, because here an external person has suffered. But what seems to be the better opinion is that if this woman is the transgressor in this court case, so she has stolen some wealth or injured somebody, so she is the transgressor, in a case like this, if the child dies, then we would not make the Sultan to be the guarantor, as he's only doing what is obligatory on him. However, if the woman is a victim, and the Sultan knows that she's pregnant, and that if she gets afraid, this could have consequences on the child, then in a case like this, we would have reasons to make the Sultan a guarantor, because the Sultan has transgressed the limits. So he is the muta'addi. So we simply say, if the ruler knew that this woman gets frightened easily and she's pregnant, and that this could clearly have a consequence on the child, then we could make him into a guarantor, otherwise not. What about if one person tells another man to go down the well to fetch something, and as this second man goes down the well, he slips, falls, and dies? Is the first man responsible for this death? Well, we say no, because the second man who went down the well was of sound mind, and he knew what is beneficial for him and what is not beneficial. It's not like he was a kid where he'll do anything you tell him to. And it's easy to fool a kid because he does not necessarily know what is good for him and what is not. And so the child may not refuse, whereas a grown man is intelligent enough to refuse. So in this case, the second man was responsible for his own death, not the one who ordered him to go down. Unless it be the case that the first man knew that this well is dangerous. For example, it is slippery, or in the well there is a snake, or some sort of health hazard like this, and he does not inform the second man, then in this case we could indict the first man on grounds of deception, and so we say you caused his death, therefore you are a guarantor. And a similar case would be if one man orders another to climb up a tree to pick some fruits, and so he does that and he slips and falls off, then again the man who ordered the second to go up the tree is not a guarantor, because the second man could easily have refused. It's a different case, of course, if the first man forces the second to go up. So he sticks a gun to him and he says, go up the tree and fetch me some fruits. So he does go up the tree, and in so doing he slips and falls and dies. So in a case like this, the one who forced the other man, the victim, would be a guarantor for the death of this person. However, what about the case if you order a child to do something, and in so doing he dies? Will you be a guarantor in all cases? Well, if you were to give the child some money and tell him to go and buy some groceries, and he goes out to buy groceries and he gets run over by a car, or he dies through another natural cause, are you a guarantor? Well, some scholars might say yes, you are, because you caused his death. But what appears to be a more sensible opinion is that if you asked him to do something which normally children are asked to do, so they could be asked to go and run an errand to buy something from the local shop, for example. So this is something which is normal. It happens in every country. So in a case like this, you are not a guarantor. But if you tell him to do something which is not normal and he dies, then you are a guarantor. What about if the Sultan or the ruler asks a man to carry out a task? Now we know you have to obey the ruler. If the man carries out this task and he dies in the process, is the Sultan a guarantor? Well, the most balanced opinion here seems to be that if the Sultan is the oppressive type, such that if you don't obey him or you tell him, I'm not able to do this work, he's going to oppress you, hit you, or imprison you, or something of that sort, then if you were to carry out this task and you were to die, then the Sultan would be a guarantor. If the Sultan is of the merciful type, such that if you were to tell him that I am not able to do this action, then he would not oppress you, he would simply ask somebody else to do it, then in a case like this he would not stand as a guarantor. His situation would be simply like one man asking another man to do a job for him, or to run a favor for him, and the one running the favor dies in the process. We would not take to account the one who asked for the favor, because there was no force involved in this scenario, as opposed to the oppressive sultan, because we can say that there was force involved in this situation. Okay, let's move to this first hadith in the chapter, number 1023. We'll go straight into the translation because it's a longer narration. So it's on the authority of
Amr ibn Hazm
that the Prophet ﷺ wrote a scripture or a piece of writing to the people of Al-Yemen, and it's a long narration, and from the narration, which Al-Hafidh quotes, is the section of the blood money. And so it says, what translates to the following, that whoever sheds the blood of a believer through killing him, and it is proven to be the case that this is intentional murder, then this would warrant a retaliation, or a qisas. So we're talking about the life for a life scenario. Except it be the case that the awliya, or the inheritors of the killed, forego the retaliation, and so if they want blood money then the blood money would be as follows: 100 camels for the case of a life, and for a nose, if it is completely cut off, then there would be the full diya, which is the full blood money of 100 camels, and if the tongue is cut off, then there is a full diya as well, and if both the lips are cut off, then there is a full diya, and if the penis is cut off, then there is a full diya, and if both the testicles are cut off, then there is the full diya incurred, and if the spinal cord is broken, then there is a full diya, and if one leg is cut off, then there is half of a diya, or we could even say if one foot is cut off, then there is half of a diya. And in the case of a ma'muma, which is a head injury so deep that it goes right to the front of the brain, so it goes through the skull, then for an injury like this incurs a third of a diya. And for a ja'ifa, there is a third of a diya. A ja'ifa is an injury which goes into the middle of the body, so it does not end at a bone. And for a munaqqila, you have to pay 15 camels. This is an injury which crushes the bone and it moves the bone from its normal place. And for each finger of the hand and for each toe of the foot, for each of them, there is 10 camels as a diya if it is cut off. And for the tooth, we have 5 camels to pay, so that's for every tooth which is broken fully. And for the mudiha, you have to pay 5 camels. The mudiha is a head injury or a face injury which exposes the bone. And also goes on to say that a man is to be killed for a woman. And as for those people who will pay the full blood money in gold coins, so dinar, then they would have to pay 1,000 dinar. So that's if they're not paying in camels. The hadith is da'if. However, the scholars still accept this hadith and go by it. And the reason they do that, even though the hadith is da'if, is because generally the scholars have accepted this hadith and work in accordance with it. So some scholars have said that this hadith is authentic, not based on its isnad, but rather because of its shuhra, or the fact that it has become very popular and widely accepted by the ummah and its scholars. And so this is why Al-Hafidh Ibn Abdul Barr has said that because this has become so famous and widespread amongst the ummah, it resembles a mutawatir narration. So from the things we can take from this hadith is that it says the Prophet wrote this letter. We know the Prophet could not read nor write, so we have to interpret this to mean that the Prophet ordered that this letter be written. Some scholars have said that before his prophethood he did not know how to read and write, but after his prophethood he learned how to read and write, and so therefore he could write to the kings of the other places and also here in this narration to the people of Al-Yaman. However, the action of writing does not mean that the Prophet directly undertook the writing. Rather, we can say he wrote the letter, meaning he ordered that this letter be written, and all the words of the letter came from him, but he could still have a scribe writing for him. And this is what appears to be the case. From this narration, we take that qisas is applicable for intentional murder. And what appears to be the case from this narration is that the asl, or the original ruling when it comes to the blood money, is that it is based upon the camels, not any other category. And that if any other category is mentioned, then it would be the equivalent of the value of the 100 camels. And this is the majority and stronger opinion in this issue. When it comes to the limbs in your body, then either they might be one of a kind, or they could be two of a kind, or they could be something like 10 of a kind, fingers for example. So with regards to blood money, if somebody chops off a limb which is one of a kind only, then the full blood money is due. For example, the genitalia of the man, that's only one of a kind. Now if somebody chops that off, then the full blood money is due of 100 camels. Likewise with the testicles. If both testicles are cut off, then the full blood money is due. If one of them is cut off, then half of the blood money is due. What about the arms or the hand? Well, you have two hands, so each hand would be half the blood money. So both hands cut off means full blood money. Same thing with your legs or your foot. If you have two of a kind, then each is worth half the blood money. So with the fingers then, you have 10 fingers on your hand, and that includes the thumbs as well. So each then is worth 100 divided by 10, which is 10 camels. And the same thing goes with the toes of your feet. You have 10 of them, so each one is worth a tenth of the blood money, which is 10 camels, as is narrated in the narration here. With the teeth, however, it doesn't follow quite the same mathematical pattern. We normally have 32 teeth. So the blood money, according to that mathematical logic, should be 100 divided by 32, which would come to over 3 camels. However, with regards to the tooth, the Prophet has said here that for each tooth which is completely plucked out, you have to pay 5 camels. And so this is a case where we just have to stick to the text. And it doesn't have to be just cutting off this limb. What about if somebody injures the person and renders his hand paralyzed? So the hand is still intact, but it is paralyzed, so it is useless. Well, we say the blood money is definitely due, because the presence of the hand is like its absence, so it may as well be cut off. And the same thing could go with the foot as well. And any limb which you need to move and use it. But the same thing, can it be said about the nose or the air flap? So somebody injures the nose and renders it paralyzed, so that the nose loses its sensitiveness. So if you were to touch the nose, you would not feel anything, it's paralyzed. Well, we say taking away somebody's faculty of smell would incur the blood money. If we say that you need your nose to smell things, and so taking away that faculty, then you can argue that this incurs the blood money. However, if it doesn't take away the faculty of smelling, but it's just the nose which is insensitive now because it's paralyzed, then in this case, you don't need to move your nose in the same way you need to move your hand and move your feet in order to make use of it. So if it's just a case of paralyzing the nose without taking away the faculty of smelling, then in this case there is no blood money. Rather, there is something called al-hukuma. What is this? It works as follows. You give a value to this man as if he was a servant. Let's say he's worth £1,000. Then you give a value to this man after he has sustained this injury of the nose being paralyzed. Let's say now he's worth £900. What is the difference? The difference is £100. What is this difference as a fraction of the original value? 100 over 1,000 is a tenth. So this is an important fraction. What we do is that we take the full blood money, which is 100 camels, and we will give this victim a tenth of the full blood money. So you can see the difference between this and chopping the nose off entirely. Because with chopping the nose off entirely, it would be 100 camels. And the same thing can be said about the air flap. You don't need to move your air flap. So if this is rendered paralyzed, not cut off, but paralyzed, then it is not the same thing, and it is not nearly as serious as paralyzing the hand or the foot. So in a case where you paralyze the air flap, then al-hukuma is used to decide how much money should be paid to the victim. When it comes to injuries, if the injury ends up at a bone, then the ulama say you can take qisas. If not, then you cannot, because remember, one of the conditions of al-qisas is that you have to be safe from overstepping the limit. However, if we have enough technology to know that even with injuries which don't end up at the bone, we can still take qisas and not overstep the limit, if this can be done, then it has to be done. Otherwise, if we doubt, then it must not be, and we resort to the blood money. When it comes to the injuries of the head, then they have a special ruling with regards to blood money. And so the head injuries include the ones on the face. If it is a mudiha, this is the injury which leaves the bone exposed, but it does not break the bone. So if it is this sort, and remember this has to be on the head or the face, not any other part of the body. So if it is a mudiha, then it incurs 5 camels as the blood money. One step above the mudiha would be the hashima. And this is the injury which goes to the bone and also fractures the bone or crushes the bone. And in a case like this, the blood money incurred would be 10 camels. A step above the hashima is the munaqqila, which is mentioned in this narration. This is the injury which goes to the bone and it breaks the bone but also moves this bone from its original position. And this incurs 15 camels. Then after that we have the ma'muma, and this is the injury which goes beyond the skull and it exposes the surface of the brain. This is the ma'muma, and this incurs a third of the full blood money. Then after that we have the damigha, and this is the similar case with the ja'ifa. Damigha is from the ja'ifa. The ja'ifa is any wound which reaches the inner part of the body. So this could be in the belly, on the back, on the chest, and even on the head, so it reaches inside the brain. You cannot take qisas here because there is no way we can be safe that we will overstep the limit. And with any ja'ifa, it incurs a third of the diya. So the damigha is the injury which reaches inside the brain. So damigha is specific to the head, and the ja'ifa is the same thing but for any part of the body. And the point is that it incurs a third of the diya. Notice with the fingers and the teeth, it does not make a difference which finger is broken or cut off or which tooth has been plucked out. Because normally the gum teeth are more useful when it comes to chewing food than the front 2 teeth. However, when it comes to the case of blood money, they are all equal. Likewise, we can say that the thumb is far more useful to you than the little finger. However, when it comes to blood money, they are equal, and the only reason we can say they are equal is because we have the text on it, so we're not allowed to argue with the text. From this narration, we have a clear-cut evidence that a man is killed for a woman. Remember, we said that there's a difference of opinion, and we use the hadith of the Yahudi being killed for the girl as evidence that a man can be killed for a woman or a female. But this narration is even more clear-cut, that a man is killed for a woman without doubt. This is so long as there are no other preventative factors at play. For example, the difference between a Muslim and a kafir, or a parent and a son, or a free person and a servant. It mentions 1,000 dinar being given as the blood money. This is about 4,250 grams of gold. However, we can say that it depends on the value of the 100 camels at that time. So at that time, maybe 100 camels were equal to 1,000 dinar, but nowadays the value could be different. So this is the fruits of the difference of opinion. If we say that the dinar is an asl when it comes to blood money, then we say whichever time period you're living in, 1,000 dinar is the blood money. Similarly, in whichever time period you're living in, 100 camels is the blood money. But if we say that the asl is the camel and the dinar is simply the value of the camel at that time, then we would say that the asl is 100 camels, and as for the 1,000 dinar, this is not the asl. Rather, this would fluctuate in accordance with the value of the camel. So in one time period, 100 camels could be 1,000 dinar, and in another time period or place, 100 camels could be 2,000 dinar. So upon that opinion, which is the majority opinion, the amount of dinar you pay as blood money could fluctuate in accordance with the value of the camels. Okay, what about this? Somebody injures the face or head of another person, but this injury does not reach the level of mudiha, so it does not expose the bone. What would be the blood money in a case like this? Well, we would say that we would have to put a value on the blood money, but it would have to be less than 5 camels. Because 5 camels is for the mudiha, and if the injury is less than the mudiha, then the blood money to be paid would have to be less than 5 camels. So here we would have to give a value to the intensity of the injury, and then pay the blood money as is required, but it must not reach 5 camels.
Okay, here's another matter. What if a person cuts off another person's hand, but that hand itself is paralyzed? So he has not cut off a normal hand. Well, we have a narration in Sunan Abi Dawud which says that for the one who cuts off a paralyzed hand, he has to pay a third of the normal blood money, meaning a third of the blood money of a normal hand. Similarly, if he pops out a blind eye, the blood money will be a third of a normal eye. Likewise, if somebody plucks out a black tooth, it would be the third of a normal tooth. This is because these types of body parts are not normal body parts. They are deficient, therefore they would not carry the normal blood money. So the narration puts it at a third of the normal blood money.
Hadith number 1024. وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: دية الخطأ أخماسا 20 حقة 20 جذعة 20 بنات مخاض 20 بنات لبون 20 بني لبون. أخرجه الدارقطني، وأخرجه الأربعة بلفظ 20 بني مخاض بدل بني لبون. وإسناد الأول أقوى، وأخرجه ابن أبي شيبة من وجه آخر موقوفا، وهو أصح من المرفوع. وأخرجه أبو داود والترمذي من طريق عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده رفعه: الدية 30 حقة 30 جذعة 40 خلفة في بطونها أولادها. From Ibn Mas'ud, the Prophet ﷺ said that the blood money for accidental murder is to be divided up into 5 parts. 20 hiqqa, and these are camels who have completed 3 years of their life, and 20 jadha'a, these are camels who have completed 4 years of their life, and 20 banati makhad, these are female camels who have completed 1 year of their life.
Note that the hiqqa and jadha'a are also female camels, otherwise known as dromedaries.
And 20 banati laboon, these are female camels who have completed 2 years of their life, and 20 bani laboon, these are male camels who have completed 2 years of their life. And in a wording of the Sunan, it says 20 bani makhad instead of bani laboon, and bani makhad would be male camels who have completed 1 year of their life. But Al-Hafidh says that the former narration, the one in Ad-Daraqutni, this is stronger, and hence it would be more worthy to follow. Also, Abu Dawud and At-Tirmidhi report authentically, as the previous one is also authentic, that the blood money is 30 hiqqa, 30 jadha'a, and 40 pregnant female camels. So this makes 100 in total, and in the previous narration, of course, it makes 100 as well. This last narration in Sunan Abi Dawud and At-Tirmidhi is graded Hasan. Actually, this last narration which we have quoted is part of a longer narration, so let us quote the longer narration for the sake of completion and more information. It says that the Prophet says, من قتل متعمدا دفع إلى أولياء المقتول فإن شاءوا قتلوا وإن شاءوا أخذوا الدية وهي 30 حقة 30 جذعة 40 خلفة وما صولحوا عليه فهو لهم وذلك لتشديد العقل. The Prophet said, whoever kills intentionally, then he is to be taken to the awliya of the victim. Then if they want, they can kill him, or if they want, they can take the blood money. And this would be 30 hiqqa, 30 jadha'a, and 40 khalifa. And whatever they make sulh upon, then this is for them, meaning for the awliya of the victim, and this is in order to make the blood money for intentional murder more severe. So from this fuller narration, we can find that a sulh is possible.
It would be better to interpret the sulh here as meaning higher quality type of camels rather than the number of camels. Because if we open the door to changing the number of camels, then why would anyone want to take 100 camels when they can make sulh with 500 camels? So this idea of 100 camels would really be meaningless and have no practical application. So it is better to close off that door and to limit it to 100 camels, but we can make sulh on the quality of camels. So for example, the Jada'ah would be harder to find than the Bint Laboon because it would be more valuable, and so on. And the Bint Laboon is more valuable than the Bint Makhad, which in turn is more valuable than the Banu Laboon. Generally, female camels are more expensive than male camels because they give birth to yet more camels.
So, with both of these narrations, we find that the blood money in both cases is 100 camels. But the way that these 100 camels are distributed is different. The blood money of accidental murder is 100 camels, and the blood money of intentional murder is also 100 camels. But the accidental murder is easier to pay off because the camels which are to be paid off are less valuable than the camels of the intentional murder. So we find that the blood money for intentional murder is more severe. And so the lighter blood money of accidental murder, with this, the camels, of which there are 100, are divided up into 5 categories. 20 of them are camels who have completed 3 years of their age, 20 of them camels which have completed 4 years of their age, 20 of them are female camels having completed 1 year of their age, and 20 of them are female camels having completed 2 years of their age, and the final 20 are male camels having completed 2 years of their age. And this is the opinion of the majority of the scholars when it comes to the blood money of accidental murder. The madhab of Abu Hanifa goes by the other wording, which says that instead of the 20 male camels having completed 2 years of their age, he replaces it with 20 male camels having completed 1 year of their age. But like Al-Hafiz says, that the majority opinion has the stronger evidence out of the two, although both opinions are understandable and are based upon evidence. But in the second narration, we find that the 100 camels are distributed completely differently, 30 of them having completed 3 years of their age, 30 of them having completed 4 years of their age, and 40 of them being female camels who are pregnant. This clearly is far more difficult to pay off and far more valuable as well. So these 100 camels in the second narration are more valuable than the 100 in the first narration. And the reason for the difference is because in the second narration we are talking about intentional murder, not accidental murder. So with intentional murder, these 100 camels are distributed in this way. So 40 of them need to be pregnant female camels, and the other 60 are distributed as you have heard. There is another opinion in the madhab of Imam Ahmad when it comes to the accidental murder. The alternative opinion in their madhab says that the blood money will be in 4 categories: 25 Jada'ah, 25 Hiqqa, 25 Bint Laboon, and 25 Bint Makhad. And this narration also has its evidence in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad in the form of a narration which Abu Dawud has narrated on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud, that this is his wording. But if we look at this narration, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says that the blood money for the Shibhul Amd, for the quasi-intentional murder, is 25 Hiqqa, 25 Jada'ah, 25 Bint Laboon, and 25 Bint Makhad. So he doesn't say accidental murder, which is the khata. He says quasi-intentional murder, which is the Shibhul Amd. So we can say that dividing it up into these 4 parts could be applicable for the quasi-intentional murder. However, Shaykh al-Albani has graded this narration in Abi Dawud to be da'if. But if we go by it, then we could take it for the Shibhul Amd. And then when it comes to the khata, then we can go with the majority opinion and divide the 100 camels up into 5 categories as mentioned before. Then when it comes to the intentional murder, we could divide the 100 camels into the 30, 30 and 40 as mentioned before. In the case where people are unable to pay with the camels, maybe there are no camels available in the place, or perhaps there are available but the value of the camels is so incredibly high, or it becomes difficult to pay with the camels, so they want to pay by other means. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he was the Khalifa, he told the people that the camels have become expensive. So, with the blood money, the people of the dinar would pay 1,000 dinar. People of silver will pay 12,000 dirham. The owners of cows will pay 200 cows, and the owners of sheep will pay 2,000 sheep. And the people who have jewelry, they will give 200 items of jewelry. So every time and place will have their own method of evaluating the diya. Some time back in Saudi, the blood money for accidental murder was 24,000 Saudi riyal, and for intentional murder and quasi-intentional murder, it was 27,000 riyal. But this amount can fluctuate from time to time and place to place, of course. Hadith 1025 وعن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن أعتى الناس على الله ثلاثة من قتل في حرم الله ومن قتل غير قاتله ومن قتل لذحل الجاهلية أخرجه ابن حبان في حديث صححه وأصله في البخاري من حديث ابن عباس. From Ibn Amr that the Prophet said that the most rebellious people against Allah are of three types. Number one, the one who kills somebody in the haram of Allah, meaning in the haram of Mecca. Number two, the one who kills other than the one who killed his relative. And number three, the one who kills another person because of some vendetta from the days of Jahiliyyah. The hadith is sahih, and a similar version is found in Al-Bukhari, in which the Prophet said, أبغض الناس إلى الله ثلاثة ملحد في الحرم ومبتغ في الإسلام سنة الجاهلية ومطلب دم امرئ بغير حق ليهرق دمه. That the most hated people to Allah are of three types. The one who commits some major deviancy in the haram of Allah, and then secondly, the one who seeks a sunnah of the Jahiliyyah after he comes to Islam, and thirdly, the one who seeks to kill somebody without due right just in order to spill his blood. So with this narration we can say that these are the most hated people to Allah when it comes to killing somebody, or when it comes to the matter of blood. Otherwise we know that a mushrik is even more hated to Allah Jalla wa Ala, even if he does not shed blood. Because killing another person is taking his rights away primarily, but shirk is taking away the rights of Allah, and the rights of Allah are more worthy to be respected and upheld. However, not being allowed to kill somebody in the haram of Mecca, does this then mean that we are not allowed to kill somebody in retaliation? So there's a difference of opinion here. Some scholars say that if retaliation is to be taken against a man and he is in the haram, then you are not allowed to do this, because you're not allowed to kill in the haram of Mecca. Other scholars say that if you are killing with due right, then you are allowed to kill him even in the haram. So qisas is with due right, therefore you're allowed to kill him in the haram. But what seems to be the balanced opinion here is that if this person unjustly kills another person in the haram of Mecca, then qisas can be taken against him, so he can be killed in retaliation. And the reason for this is because he himself violated the sanctity of the haram. Whereas, if he was to kill somebody outside the haram, unjustly of course, and then he was to enter the haram of Mecca seeking sanctuary, then we would not be allowed to kill him. But what we could do is to treat him harshly so as to force him to leave the haram of Mecca. Then we could take him and give him the qisas punishment. We can also take from this hadith that these sins are not of equal type. Some sins are greater than others, because here the Prophet says that the most rebellious person against Allah. So this means that rebellion could be of different types. You could have a sin which is more rebellious than another type of sin. So killing somebody unjustly outside the haram is not the same as killing him unjustly inside the haram. The sin of killing is the same, but the ugliness of it is not. So we take from this hadith then that the haram of Mecca needs to be respected. Also that it is a major sin to kill somebody who has not killed your relative. And also it is a major sin to give life to the sunnah of Jahiliyyah in Islam. Rather, the sunnah of Jahiliyyah which Islam abrogates must be left abrogated. About the Haram of Mecca, Allah Jalla wa Ala says in the Quran, وَمَن يُرِدَ فِيهِ بِإِلْحَادٍ بِظُلْمٍ نُذِقْهُ مِنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. And whoever just intends or wants to commit an act of deviancy by committing some oppression or wrongdoing, then we will make him taste a painful torment. Ibn Mas'ud says about this that when a man makes a firm intention to commit a sin, then this is written against him, except if he is in the Al-Bayt al-Haram, the area of the Al-Masjid al-Haram, because in that case it's not just written against him, Allah will make him taste a painful torment. So notice the difference between wanting to commit a sinful action and you have this firm intention, not just a mere thought, but we're talking about a real firm intention to commit a sin, then this is written down against you because of your evil intention. But you are not necessarily taken to account for committing the sin. It may well be the case that if you do not commit this sin for the sake of Allah, then this is written as a good deed for you. However, in the haram, it is more than just writing it down as an evil intention. Rather, Allah Jalla wa Ala will make you taste the painful torment. So it is just so much more severe. Likewise, the Prophet saying, إِنَّ دِمَاءَكُمْ وَأَعْرَاضَكُمْ وَأَمْوَالَكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ حَرَامٌ كَحُرْمَةِ شَهْرِكُمْ هَذَا فِي بَلَدِكُمْ هَذَا فِي يَوْمِكُمْ هَذَا. That your blood, your honor, and your wealth are sacred, just like the sanctity of this month of yours, in this city of yours, and on this day of yours. He's talking on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and they were in Mecca. And in the farewell Hajj, the Prophet ﷺ explicitly stated that these blood vengeances of the days of Jahiliyyah are abrogated, and the first blood vendetta from the days of Jahiliyyah to be abrogated is the one of Ibn Rabi'ah, where the tribe of Hudayl killed him. So he says that no blood revenge must be taken because of these feudal battles based on the tribalistic calls of Jahiliyyah. So definitely killing somebody in the haram unjustly is a worse sin than killing him outside. However, does this affect the blood money, such that if you were to kill him in the haram, it would incur a larger blood money than if you were to kill him outside? Well, some scholars have actually said this. They've said that the blood money is to be made more severe. They've differed as to how they make it severe and the amount which is to be given. However, what seems to be the better opinion is that the blood money is not made severe because the evidences of the blood money are general. They make no difference as to where or when the murder is committed. Sure, the sin is greater, but that does not mean that the blood money is greater. Because when it comes to the sin, then this is the right of Allah against you. But when it comes to the blood money, then this is the right of other humans against you. And that right of other humans against you remains the same regardless of whatever place you're in. Hadith 1026 وعن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ألا إن دية الخطأ شبه العمد ما كان بالصوت والعصا 100 من الإبل منها 40 في بطونها أولادها. أخرجه أبو داود والنسائي وابن ماجه وصححه ابن حبان. From Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As that the Prophet said that the blood money of the accidental murder, quasi-intentional, the one which is committed with a whip or a stick, is to pay 100 camels. From them, there must be 40 camels who are pregnant. The hadith is sahih. Here, the Prophet mentions the word khata, but he also mentions shibhul amd. And we know there's a difference between khata and shibhul amd. So what appears to be the case here, that when he says khata, he is intending shibhul amd. Because with the shibhul amd, there is an element of the khata in it. And he says that it is the one committed by a whip or a stick, so you are attacking the person, but you don't intend to kill him. And the weapon you are using does not normally lead to a death, like a stick or a whip. This narration suggests that when it comes to the shibhul amd, it is the same as the amd. Because notice here, he says there are 100 camels, 40 of which are pregnant. And we know from the other narration which we quoted, that this is exactly the same blood money as that of the intentional murder. According to 3 of the 4 madhahib, Abu Hanifa, Malik and Ahmed, the shibhul amd is 100 camels divided up into 4 types: 25 bint makhad, 25 bint laboon, 25 hiqqa and 25 jadha'a. And this is the narration from Ibn Mas'ud. And as for this narration, it gives us a different numbering. It says 100 camels, 40 of them must be pregnant. This is the same as the intentional murder. One thing which the shibhul amd and the khata have in common is that this blood money is to be paid by the aqila, and these are the male relatives of the perpetrator who are related to the perpetrator through at least the father. Another point in common is that both khata and shibhul amd have a kaffara which you need to offer, which is to free a believing servant. If not, then it is to fast 2 consecutive lunar months. Hadith 1027 وعن ابن عباس عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال هذه وهذه سواء يعني الخنصر والإبهام رواه البخاري ولأبي داود والترمذي دية الأصابع سواء والأسنان سواء والثنية والضرس سواء ولابن حبان دية أصابع اليدين والرجلين سواء 10 من الإبل لكل إصبع. From Ibn Mas'ud, the Prophet said, this and this are equal, and he was referring to the little finger and the thumb. Al-Bukhari reported it, and in Abu Dawood and At-Tirmidhi, the Prophet said that the blood money of the fingers are all equal, and for all of the teeth, the blood money is equal, and for the front foretooth and the molar tooth, it is equal. This is also Sahih, and in the version of Ibn Hibban, he says that the blood money of the fingers of the hand and also the toes of the feet, they are all equal, and it is 10 camels for each finger or each toe. We mentioned the ruling before of the blood money of the finger and the tooth. We say it is all equal. For each finger it is 10 because you have 10 fingers, so 10 times 10 is 100, which is the full blood money. And likewise with the toes of the foot. As for the teeth, then you have 32 teeth altogether. But for each tooth, we know it is 5 camels. And we know this from the previous narration of the letter to the people of Al-Yaman. And this is the case even though the molar tooth is more useful than the front tooth, when it comes to eating at least. But the point is that the front tooth could have uses which the molar tooth does not have. So for beautification purposes, the front teeth are definitely more useful.
But the bottom line is we follow the text and not necessarily our rationale. Okay, let's take some review questions. So question number 1. What are the 5 conditions for administering a disciplinary hitting to your child or those under your guardianship? Question number 2. Explain, giving a numerical example, what we mean by al-hukuma. Question number 3. State the blood money for a khata or accidental killing, and also state the blood money for an amd or an intentional killing, and also for the shibhul amd. And of course this is going to be in terms of camels as the narrations inform us.